So I chose to adopt the historical archaeologist James Dietz. So, some deets on Dietz. He was born in Cumberland, Maryland, a little coal mining town, in 1930. He graduated from Fort Hills High School in 1948 and went on to attend Harvard University on a scholarship. He's a self-proclaimed hillbilly, so he himself was surprised that the institution let him in. He did take a 4-year break in his education to join the Air Force. The Korean War was going on. He served 4 years, received an honorable discharge, and returned to Harvard to finish his undergraduate, graduate, and also went on to receive a PhD. Most of his undergraduate and graduate work was under the direction of Professor Don Lamer, and they were essentially working at the Medicine Crow site in South Dakota. Some of their preliminary work was to salvage sites that were slated to be essentially destroyed to flooding for the production of a hydroelectric dam, kind of a running theme in some of my presentations. His time as an undergraduate and graduate student doing this work really inspired the topic for his PhD, which he would go on to title An Archaeological Approach to Kinship Change in 18th Century Arikara Culture. And this brings up one of his, I think, biggest research contributions. He shifted the lens that individuals really used to look through historical archaeology. Prior to Dietz's work, the approach was generally from the perspective of white, middle class to wealthy men. So his decision to change the perspective developed more of an inclusive nature. He developed a narrative that would kind of help describe the Arikara culture. He figured through the observation of pottery shards that there was actually a matrilineal sense of descent within the culture, and it was all very cutting edge for the time. Beyond his dissertation, he had many books that were published, and also in his career, he reframed the story of pilgrims in this country. Prior to his work, there was a lot of kind of falsified, fictionalized versions of the life of pilgrims, generally shown with white and black clothing and buckle hats, but none of this was very accurate. So he did go on to establish the first living museum at the Plymouth colony. So that involved individuals wearing historically accurate clothing and essentially living a realistic life that would have been seen in the late 1600s and early 1700s. Also, as part of his research contributions, one of the books he wrote was called In Small Things Forgotten. And his style of writing was very unique in that it was sort of written with layman's terms. So an individual who wasn't already classically trained in the field of archaeology would be able to read this and follow along and understand, which essentially expands general access to the field of archaeology, which is very beneficial. In terms of his theoretical contributions, I came across a quote from him where he said, first I was a cultural historian, then I was a new archaeologist, then I was a structuralist, and now I'm a post-structuralist. And he said he didn't really change anything about the way he was conducting his field work. The only thing that changed was the way the field perceived his work. And he also wondered what kind of archaeologist he would be called come the year 2000. And some influences on him, I honestly believe that he was a very unique, creative individual. Some of the work he did was truly groundbreaking. While he was doing his undergraduate studies, he actually wrote a program for an IBM computer that helped the organization and dating of all the pottery shards they found, which made the whole ordeal much less time-consuming. And this actually led to the coining of the term computational seriation, which it's still applied and used today. And to summarize the life of Dr. James Dietz, as I mentioned, he was born in 1930. He did pass away in the year 2000 from pneumonia. He was a pioneer in the application of contemporary technologies. He was highly influential in the expansion of inclusive historical narratives, and his work led to many referring to him as a father of historical archaeology. And here are the sources I used. Does anybody have any questions?